Hey guys, it's Thomas here, and it's been a couple of months since we did the mega build.
Well, based on the size of this truck and the size of my door, I'm starting to worry. This is gonna be a very expensive mistake.
Cue the Mission Impossible music.
Bum 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 bum. Copyright, hope not.
Flashbacks are great. Anyways, a lot of you guys have been asking for an update on the 265, and I think it's due time to have one. It's been a couple of months, so let's do an update. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the new fish that I've added to the system and go over the filtration and how that's been performing, talk a little bit about what I've been feeding the tank, you know, the general happenings and care and maintenance that I do on this system and how I feel about its performance, which is generally positive. I'm quite happy. So let's find out why that is by me updating you. Here we go. So first off, let's talk a little bit about the fish that I've added to the system. As you can see, it's a lot busier in the tank now than it was before, and that's because mostly I added a school of giant danios. There's 11 of them in there. They're a great schooling fish. They stay nice and tight together, and they get large enough that in this tank, they're not going to look super, super tiny, and none of the larger fish at full size would ever want to go after them. They've got a nice blue coloration with some orange in the fins as well, and overall just a handsome fish. Now I did have a bit of snafu with them when they started off in here. They were a very small and thin. They've grown quite a bit since I put them in, and they kept going down the overflow, which is not the best. So every once in a while I'd have to go into the sump and pull them out of the filter socks and put them back in the tank. There was 3 individuals that clearly were the same fish every time, doing this over and over. Maybe they thought it was fun. I'm not sure, but the good news is they're nice and fat now, and they can't do that anymore. So that's good. Next up, I added 6 rainbows. I added 3 of the Millennium rainbows, which are the nice deep red guys with a little bit of gold flecking in the body. I also added 3 really interesting Parkinsoni hybrid rainbows. They aren't pure Parkinsoni from what I can tell. They were listed as a hybrid. They're really neat. They kind of remind me of maybe a Parkinsoni crossed with possibly like a neon rainbow or a red laser, whatever you want to call them. They're really cool. They're developing this really nice kind of pylon orange in the back of the body, and they still have a little bit of the blue striations in them, which is nice. I've also added to this system a blue-eyed Ancestris pleco, which is like a yellow bushy nose essentially with blue eyes, which is really cool. She's not always in the most opportune place for filming, unfortunately, but she does a good job cleaning algae. I also added a leopard frog pleco, which is a little bit more on the rare side. Really nice, super elusive, basically in the driftwood all the time and never really see it, but it's okay. Every once in a while when I do see it, I'm like, ah, leopard pleco, there you are. You leopard frog, you're so cute. And then I smile for the rest of the day. It's like a little surprise that I get every once in a while. I've also added a single blue Acara just to see how well it was going to do. It's a little bit pale in this system. Maybe it's a little bit too busy for it, possibly having a hard time competing for food. But it is looking nice and round, so I'm not worried about it necessarily getting too skinny and not thriving. It should catch up with the other guys. And last but not least, I added a pair of Vieja Argentea. As far as I can tell, it's a male-female pair. They're still very, very young, but they are dimorphic, so you can see the difference in the body shape and in the coloration. The female's a little bit more on the round side, shorter bodied. The male has much brighter black barring and elongated by comparison to the female. They're behaving. All the Viejas seem to be getting along. It could be the size difference right now. You never know. They could get a little bit more aggressive with each other as they grow. And that's it for new additions. That's what I got going on in here. Just to catch you up on the other fish, the Vieja Sinspilum is growing rapidly. It's actually getting quite large now. I'm really happy with how the color's coming along. However, anytime he gets excited, or he or she, I'm not sure if it's male or female yet, I get black barring on it. So it's hard to get a nice picture of it all colored up because it tends to get the barring right away as soon as I go to feed it or grab the camera. So it's like, as soon as I try to get a nice picture, I'm gonna go ahead and get as ugly as I possibly can. I don't know why, but that's what it's doing. And everybody's eating great. The barbs are the most aggressive fish in this tank, thankfully just with each other. I think the move from the store into a nice big system with very clean water sparked a kind of breeding frenzy, and then there's only one female and there are 5 males. So essentially what happened is the males were beating the snot out of each other. They don't basically fight to kill or really injure, but it looks super, super scary and aggressive. And that's it. Let's move on to filtration. Okay guys, under the hood here, filtration's doing a great job. First off, I'll talk a little bit about the sump. The sump is doing exactly what I wanted it to do. The design is actually fantastic. I was definitely able to slow down the flow enough in the center chamber where that big marine pure block and the denitrate and stuff are sitting. I'm not getting a lot of nitrates in this system, but I'm not registering ammonia or nitrite either. So I would have to believe, given the amount of food that goes in here, I am getting some denitrification. I've only done 1 water change on the system so far, and that's been 2 months, right? And that's not usually what you do, especially when you're adding fish or have a pretty decent bioload with a lot of food. You'd expect to do more water changes. So I'd like to believe that that's because I've got some denitrification going on. That's the only thing that really makes sense to me. The one thing I will say about the block that's in the bottom here, the coarse foam block, it does plug up pretty quickly. The driftwood has been shedding a lot of particulates off of it. I don't know if the plecos are contributing to that or if it's just this wood, when it got waterlogged, just decided to lose a couple layers. Not a big deal, but it does plug up that very, very quickly. So it's pretty much black right now, but it was blue to start. So I gotta replace that. I've actually got 2 of them so I can swap them out and I don't have to sit there rinsing them all the time. I always recommend having extra mechanical filtration like coarse foam blocks or filter socks, stuff like that, so you don't have to immediately go rinse them and put them back. You can just quickly swap them out, leave them in a bucket, maybe do them the next maintenance day. You don't have to do them right away. The chamber that the pump's in is always relatively clean. The pump isn't very dirty. I haven't cleaned the pump or anything at all. So that's a pretty good indication that the debris that does end up in the system doesn't end up at the pump or goes back into the tank. So I'm really happy with that. With the volume of water that is in this, and given that I have glass tops, I don't get a ton of evaporation, so I don't have to fill this up too often. It is a pretty small reservoir, given the fact that the tank's so large. So I'm finding that I have to top up every 4 to 6 days, depending on how dry it is in the house, from evaporation. I will probably put a 10-gallon container beside the sump and get an ATO on here just to extend it. I think with the 10 gallons, given that I think this volume here is about 5 gallons, maybe a little bit larger, I'll probably extend it to 2 to 3 weeks between top-ups, which I would really appreciate because doing it once a week isn't terrible, but if I don't have to do it once a week, I'm a lot happier. The FX6, as expected, is doing a stellar job. It's got the water flowing through it. I've only had to clean it out once. Being a canister filter and having everything kind of jammed in there in the baskets, when I pull it out to clean it, it's really easy. Just lift the tabs out. I actually just disconnect these, take the canister over to the sink, get it rinsed out, put it back in. It's going to do a great job as a backup filter. As I mentioned, the whole reason this is on the system is in case that main pump goes out, which I'm going to shut the main pump off and show you a simulation of what happens essentially. If that main pump ever goes, there is still a ton of flow within the system from the 2 efflux pumps that are on the sides of the tank, plus the filtration that's in this FX6. So you'll be able to see, even with the water line dropped, there's a ton of water movement on the surface. There's going to be lots of oxygenation, plus the filtration from the FX6. So I never have to worry, even if that main pump kaputs for whatever reason. That's a big relief for me, especially because I've got quite a lot invested in fish in this tank at this point, and I've also got a lot emotionally invested in this tank. I would hate to see anything happen to these fish. I actually like them a lot. They're my little friends. I come down every day, feed them, you know. I don't want to see anything bad happen. So when the main pump shuts off, the sump itself fills up with water, not to capacity. There's even still room left for water. Obviously, the siphon breaks in the overflows prevent too much water from coming out of the display itself. Once that's all shut off, the water level's dropped. You still see all that water motion up there. And if I push the button again, turn the pump back on, the water level just drops in the sump, goes back up into the tank, and everything's hunky-dory. This pump doesn't need to, or filter needs to get restarted at all. It's good through the whole process. The efflux pumps are good through the whole process. There's no hiccups. And that's really what you want to see in a redundancy, that if something happens, everything can restart without issue. In the event that everything shuts off, including the efflux and the FX6, during like a power outage situation, when the power comes back on, it all kicks on again by itself, and there's no issues. I'm not getting any issues with the water siphoning into the sump, or the sump's ability to restart and kind of send water all throughout the system. Everything starts up perfectly again, which is, again, massive relief, because that's what you want in a system. So my redundancies that I put in place are working as I expected them to. All the plumbing, the way it's set up, is doing its job. I don't have any problems there. So all in all, this system is rocking. This is exactly kind of what I wanted this system to be, and it's working as expected. So I'm happy with that. I mean, in the past, I have had an error here or there and had to repair it or fix it so that in those situations it works properly. I guess I've learned from my mistakes, and I am now satisfied with this very large aquarium that I've done. So in the water entry section of the sump, the filter socks do a great job of removing all of the debris, but they plug up. So the driftwood's been, I won't say problematic, but it has shed, like I said, a lot of mulm off of it, and it does fill up the filter socks. I've just recently rinsed them, as you can see. They're pretty white now. They were thick and brown. The water was actually barely passing through them, and it was all pouring through the emergency slots on the water entry system that ensures that nothing ever overflows. So I did get some of that mulm down here in the sump. You can see it's kind of resting on the biological filter media. So I'm going to have to get my Python and vacuum out the sump soon, get all that mulm out of there, because I don't want it sitting there. I want to make sure that the biomedia can always breathe perfectly and isn't getting stifled. I mean, it's not terrible. It can definitely get water flow. I'm not worried about it yet, but I don't want to ever have to worry about it. So I'm going to take some preventative measures and clean it out ahead of time, and maybe step up the amount of rinsing I do on the filter socks. Like I said, I did get a second set of them so that I don't have to, take them out, rinse them just then, and then put them back. If I do notice that they've backed up, I can just quickly swap them and deal with the rinsing part later. So that saves me some time, especially in a pinch. And I do have one kind of gripe with the sump, and that is the lid. The lid has naturally decided to bow up and away from the moisture. So basically what's happened is the acrylic on the bottom where the water is has absorbed water and expanded. And that's caused the lid to have a bit of a bow. I'm sure you can see there it's not exactly flat. It's not a big deal, really. It's more aesthetically an issue for me. It doesn't hurt the performance of the sump at all. It's not going to cause any problems with the sump. It's not like I'm going to get a lot of evaporation out of there. It's not like I get water splashing out of there. It's just not perfect. And I'm a fan of perfect. I like perfect. I've got that thing in my brain that says something should be exactly so, the way it was designed, and if anything happens to that, I get sad. Even if I scratch the sump, which is kind of irrelevant because it's behind closed doors, I would, in my guts, be like, oh, why aren't you perfect? And I don't want to feel that way. But this lid has made me feel that way. I'm going to have to ignore it, though, because, like I said, it's not that big of a deal. It's just a pet peeve, I guess. When I feed the fish, I try to keep their diet a little bit varied. I don't like feeding one type of food exclusively. So what I feed is a mixture of flake food, which I use the Big Al staple flake. It's a great complete flake food for tropical fish. It works really well as a staple. And then I mix in a little bit of New Life Spectrum. I've got two different types. I've got their red formula as well as their standard formula. And I do mix in a little bit of frozen food now and then. I've got a saltwater tank upstairs, which I'll show you guys some other time. And I feed them frozen, mysis, etc., some brine shrimp that's enriched. So every once in a while, I'll drop a couple cubes of that down in here just to get everybody super excited and stimulated. But I'm going to feed them right now just to show you. They love to eat. That is their thing. That is their jam. I mean, they're a little shy right now because I'm standing close to the tank. There's somebody else here that they don't know, and a big shark eye looking camera, but I'm sure you'll see them go nuts. All right, fellas, It's time. Come on. Let's not be shy. I actually put quite a bit of food in here, like I had mentioned. And I like to feed directly in front of the pump because it blows the food across the aquarium. So as you can see, all the little Danios are going nuts. The rainbows are in it. The larger cichlids don't really go too crazy for the flake food. It's a very small offering for them, especially because I crunch it up nice and small. But what they do really like is the ultra red formula from New Life. The reason I don't mind blowing the food across the tank and it going on the bottom is because I have a lot of species in here that will actually just eat directly off the bottom, and they naturally want to do that. The Acaras, the Geophagus, they all enjoy that kind of feeding. That's their regular feeding habit. And then I also have some of the larger New Life Spectrum Cyclosoma formula, which is mostly for the big Vieja, but all of the larger cichlids eat this stuff. They really like it. So 2 months in, I'm still loving this decor. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I actually only made one real change, which was on this side. I ended up flipping the big stone around because I like the overhang that it provides now. It adds a little bit more interest to this spot. I also shifted the driftwood on this side a little bit, but it's stellar. Everything stays nice and clean. I was getting a little bit of a brown diatom type film algae on all of the rock work. The plecos really helped with that. They kind of pulled all of that off. I think it was just a little bit of growing pains during the cycle for the aquarium because it hasn't returned since it's been removed. That could just be them being diligent, but given that they're just 2 little plecos and this is quite a big system, I'm pretty sure it was also a little bit due to the cycle of the tank. But it's gone now. It looks awesome. I do get a little bit of algae on the glass. The only spot you can still kind of see it is just down at the bottom where the sand is, because obviously I don't want to take my mag float and get down in here too far and start messing with sand, because if it gets between the mag float and the glass and I start cleaning up here, I could be scratching the aquarium all to kingdom come, and I don't want to do that. I want it to stay nice. The mag float is pretty much my primary tool for maintenance when I'm not working on any of the filtration. That's the only thing I've had to do in this tank is clean the glass with the mag float. So that's been great. The decor works well. The maintenance is low on the actual display side of the tank. And I couldn't be happier because that is exactly what I wanted. I may or may not be adding a few plants here and there. I guess you will see on the next update if I do that. And that is the update of the 265 mega build. I'm sure you're wondering if I'm going to be adding more fish. And here's the thing. I really considered it. There are some extra species I'd like to put in here, maybe some catfish, etc. However, I'm at a really comfortable place where the bio load is really doing its own thing, and it's requiring no extra maintenance. I'm not doing a lot of water changes on the system. My parameters are stable, and I kind of don't want to mess with that, so I thought I would let these fish grow out some more. I mean, some of them are going to get a lot more size still, and see what the system's like at that point. And if things are still going smooth and I'm not, tipping the scales of maintenance, maybe I'll add more fish. We'll see. Right now, I'm really enjoying the not having to do a lot on this tank aspect of this build. If you guys have any questions regarding this tank, I am happy to answer them. Drop it down in the comment section below. Reach out on social media like Facebook or Twitter, and I'll get back to you because that's what I like to do. And as always, you should subscribe, because if you don't, you could miss something. And we've got lots of somethings coming that you don't want to miss. So subscribe and keep on tanking, because you gotta. Am I right? Am I right? Tanking's the thing to do that we all must and we shall tank on into the future.